So now let's move on to the panel discussions conducted by the finest names in the industry today. Our first panel for the evening will share their views on various changes that online gaming has brought into the world in terms of careers in esports and pro gaming, emerging market opportunities, and the regulations and laws created to adapt to this ever evolving sector. Welcoming our panelists for this session, Rohit Gupta, founder and CEO of Rollicule, Roland Landers, consultant at All India Gaming Federation, Siddharth Kedia, CEO of Nodwin Games, and our moderator for the session, Lakshmi Khanolkar, CEO and founder of Apar Games. Their detailed bios and LinkedIn profiles are available in the chat box. And in the interest of time, over to you, Lakshmi. Let's dive straight into the discussion.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Lakshmi and I am co-founder CEO of Apar Games. Apar Games is into casual game development and publishing. And I have finest people with me, Siddharth, Roland, and Rohit. So starting with you, Siddharth, can you briefly introduce yourself, your company, and how COVID has helped you pre and post COVID scenario?
Siddharth, can you unmute?
Yes. Hi. Thanks, Lakshmi. Hi, everyone. My name is Siddharth Kedia. I'm the CEO of Nodwin Gaming. Nodwin is a company which creates esports IPs, both for live content and live and non-live content. And as we go along in this session, I'll probably speak a lot more about what is esports and the finer nuances of that. As far as COVID is concerned, as much as, I hate to say this, COVID has been a massive, or the lockdown rather imposed due to COVID has been a massive boon for the gaming and esports industry in general. And I think the fillip that the industry has got in terms of growth is probably, we have been accelerated by 3-4 years in the last 7 months. And that's something that we all need to look upon, learn from, and build upon. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Roland, how about you?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Roland Landers. I'm the CEO of the All India Gaming Federation, the self-regulation industry body for online skill games. And as far as the lockdown is concerned, as everyone is aware, the online skill gaming sector was already on an upswing much prior to the lockdown period, but the last 9 months has only accelerated the business exponentially.
Super. Rohit, can you introduce yourself, your company, and how COVID has helped you, not helped you?
Okay. So hi everyone. My name is Rohit Gupta. I'm the founder and CEO of Rollicule Games. So we are an award-winning mid-core mobile games company. We started back in 2010. So it's been 10 years, almost a decade we survived in the gaming industry. We are one of the portfolio companies of Mumbai Angels as well. And we have been targeting a lot. We have been playing a lot in the global market. So got some great award-winning games, whether it is Flick Tennis, which won the International Mobile Gaming Awards, to very recently in South by Southwest, right? Very recently as a company, we started foraying into virtual reality. So we created official games for Australian Open, as well as Roland Garros, which is the French Open. So COVID has been a mixed bag for us. So for example, all the games that we developed for Australian Open and Roland Garros were shown at the event right now. Since the sports has completely halted, so that part of the business got affected, but definitely the consumer part has picked up. So it's kind of a mixed bag for us.
Nice. So seeing that you have experience on different gaming formats, maybe do you want to define what casual game is, maybe, or mid-core game? Do you want to define casual in the mid-core games?
Sure. So basically, there are two parameters in which you will define these kind of games. So one is how deep is the meta game of any game. So casual games usually have a much simpler a meta game. When I say about meta games, it is what is happening internally, the game within the game. And the second parameter that defines sometimes does not is the graphics, right? How the games looks. So a good example of a casual game is Candy Crush Saga, and a good example of mid-core game is PUBG Mobile.
Nice. So Roland, we understand there are different kind of gaming formats, right? You have casual games who rely on, as Nitish was explaining, rely on predominantly ads and IPs. But then there's also RMG, real money gaming happening, and also esports. So Roland, do you want to sort of define real money gaming, which basically differentiate from the other genres of gaming?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, so RMG essentially are gamers playing games online, paying to play online, obviously, and aiming for a cash prize in return.
Okay. And so talking about esports, I think Siddharth, you would be the best one to define that.
If I mean, there are so many definitions of esports floating around, but the guy who's considered as the father of esports, Jens Hilgers, I'll give you his definition. So he said esports are video games that have 5 characteristics. 1, they are online, hence they are electronic. 2, they are multiplayer, which means they are necessarily competitive. 3, you don't pay to win, which means they are fair. 4, these are skill based, where it's the talent and not the chance that determines the winner. And these are a sport where physical response determines the result. So that's the definition of esport. Like any other traditional sport, the only difference is the electronic part. Everything else is the same as a sport is defined by the Olympic Association, for example.
Got it. And also, I guess a spectator plays a great role in esports.
Yes. So the very fact that it's called esports is because it's a spectator sport. It's not just people playing competitively with each other, but it's people being put on a pedestal, who are playing competitively, and disproportionately large number of people are seeing them play against each other.
Right. So on that note, do you want to actually, because in my mind, or rather, real money gaming also gives real reward to the players, and also the esports. But what's the fundamental difference between these two gaming formats?
See, so there are essentially 2 differences. One, in esports, by its very definition, there is no money in and money out. You don't pay to play, you don't pay to win. You pay because you have earned your position to be in that position, and then you are paid as a prize pool when you win it. So that's your number 1 difference. The number 2 difference is the element of skill versus chance. The chance or the luck is a little more skewed in RMG as against a pure play esport, because think about it, if I'm playing on an RMG platform, and let's say I'm playing a game against the best player in that game, no matter how many times I play that game against that person, I am going to lose. And hence, at some point in time, I will stop coming to that platform and wasting my money. Whereas if there is an element of chance, and I might be playing against the best player, but because there's something, stacked up in a way whereby I could win against that person, even if it's 1 out of 5 times, 1 out of 4 times, I will continue to play that. So I think these are 2 very distinct differences between RMG and esports.
Right. So Rohit, coming to you, what as a developer and publisher of various different kinds of games, do you see any opportunity in RMG, and how do you see that as an opportunity as a developer?
Okay. Yeah, so basically the way I look at RMG is it's like a platform similar to what Apple and Google has, right? So it kind of creates another avenue for the developers to monetize, right? So we as a company doesn't have an RMG game, but if I have to create one, then apart from looking at just Apple or Google, where the monetization is mostly through in-app purchases and ads, RMG platforms is a different kind of monetization, right? So the design changes from that perspective.
Correct. As what Siddharth was mentioning about that the core motivation is different for those kind of player bases.
Correct.
So being on the, because we're talking about mid-core game, so where do you think that India or Indian developers stand with respect to creating a game like PUBG? And this question is essentially to all three of you. Maybe I would like to have all of your opinion on the same topic. So maybe
Okay.
your
So I mean, so in terms of the development capabilities of us as a nation, right, as India, it is very, very far behind when it comes to mid-core games, right? And it is very evident from the fact that when PUBG became very successful, right, there was not even a single studio in India who could create like a PUBG clone if they even tried to do that, right? But if you look at, for example, Ludo, right, which is like an equal success when it comes to the kind of users that they got. There were like 100 more Ludo games that came there. So that is unfortunately the state of the mid-core games in India, and it's the question of ecosystem, right? So it takes time. It's not something that you can achieve overnight, but we can definitely see a lot of gaming studios coming in mid-core, doing some good work. Like for example, there's Lifelike Studio who has released this game called as Root Heist, right? Which the graphics looks amazing. June Gaming is there. We are a mid-core gaming company, Nodding Edge Studios. Couple of people who are doing, but still in a very, very small quantity.
right, Roland, do you want to shed some light on the same topic?
No, I am not qualified enough to answer this, but I agree with what Rohit is saying. Maybe at the lower end of the complexity, we may be good, but I think we are getting there with so many studios setting up shop here, and a lot of work being done in these globalized teams. I'm sure going forward there is scope for upscaling and upgrading.
Yeah, that sounds really motivating. Siddharth, what do you think? What is your take on this?
Actually, in my mind, I think there are two parts to it, right? The supply side and the demand side. So the supply side, Rohit has already spoken about. But if you look at the demand side, and if you look at the basic economics of any IP works, it could be a game, it could be a movie, it could be a magnum opus in terms of a web series or a TV series, is the willingness to pay. So when you make a game like a PUBG Mobile, you spend significant amount of money in making a game like that, and you have to continuously keep spending money in that because you have to keep the game engaging enough throughout the life cycle. I mean, that's the whole genesis of the whole FTA genre of gaming. So if you were to do that, the willingness to pay of an Indian consumer today, and Nitish had also mentioned this in his talk right before our panel, is not where it is in China or in the US. We are getting there, but it's a slow and steady process. And hence, in a few years from now, would we start making games like PUBG more from an economic standpoint and less from a capability standpoint? The answer is yes. Today, it's the economics that precludes us from making a game like that.
Sure. So as you were saying that, yeah, maybe when people would start spending more, we would have a better, more people probably
Yeah, I mean, if I were
evaluating,
to
developing. So that's not.
if I were to give you an example, and these numbers came out in the news when the whole PUBG ban happened, if you look at the install base of PUBG Mobile, India contributed 20+% of that install base globally. But if you look at the revenue contribution that came for PUBG Mobile, it was 0.6%. And that's the difference we are talking about, right? And that's what Nitish was also alluding to. So there is a massive headroom out here for that growth. And we are very well poised as a country to capture that growth. And hence, from a long-term perspective, gaming is extremely bullish in a country like India. But for a game developer to take that kind of a risk and put in that money today, then they need to have a very long runway where they need to keep that game alive while our willingness to pay is going to come up and the economics or the unit economics of that game will start working out. And hence, like I said, will we make games like that, which are local games but are globally relevant in the next few years? I have a very firm belief we will get there.
Yeah, I mean, that was my next question actually. Maybe Rohit, if you want to take up. So the question was that, yes, we all are saying that because we started from mobile, so predominantly Indian gamer are the mobile first gamers, and when this was happened, and when everyone had a great internet connection and they were consuming games, at that time the majority of the business model was free to play, right? So that is why somewhere we are yet to get into the paying mode of it. But as said, that we have a huge number of downloads. So Rohit, do you think this would be a good time for maybe brands to take games seriously? And if yes, then what do you think? Do you have any experiences, or you've already done of these kind of work, or whatever you want to contribute?
So, so there is always being a connection between brands and games, right? But I mean, frankly, I have interacted not very much when it comes to brands. So, for example, Australian Open and Roland Garros are the two games that we built, which was more from a branding perspective. So, gaming is definitely taken seriously, but you won't find branded games as such, right? uh, I mean, any brand wouldn't go and create their game. They would most likely look at games as an advertising platform, if that answers your question.
Yeah, sure. I mean, my question was that essentially, okay, as earlier we say that, because if we are relying only on advertising model, then the fill rate is low. So obviously that is happening because probably we're not having enough campaigns happening. That is A. Or B, our brands, can brands come on board and use this as a platform to probably advertise? Maybe Sid, do you have any
So
pointers on this?
yeah, so I think in-game advertising, I will let Rohit and Roland talk about. But let's talk about esports and the whole brand participation in esports. We have seen a considerable shift in the last 1 year. So the brands that we were waiting for the last year to get a meeting, they came calling on us, saying we see how esports is growing. We see the kind of engagement that you're getting in your broadcasts. We would like to participate in esports, and much to our relief, there were some brands we had to say no to, saying this is not a connect with your TG. I mean, my primary TG for this broadcast is 18 to 24 4 year old. Your TG is 40 plus. There is no connect. So unless you're repositioning your brand, sure, let's go for it. I will build a solution for you. But that was a great position to be in when you say that there is no connect. So in esports, we have seen a massive proliferation in terms of just the interest that brands are now showing in participating in esports, and just coming out there saying we want to invest money out here, we want to be associated with esports, and that's a huge win in my mind.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, as you said, that at least people, I mean, the brands are becoming aware that, there is a user base and we can use it. Although there may not be a solution readily available, but that's a great start, because then, companies can actually start creating solutions which could help this situation. So, Roland, from maybe from the compliance perspective, or whenever we are uh, either we are advertising our own product, or anything that you think that we should be the startup should be aware of or be mindful of when it comes to uh, any compliance side of the uh, business, or regulatory rather side of the business?
Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah. We've just about done a consultative session with the Advertising Standards Council of India for online skill gaming, and it's already come into force actually from the 15th of December. So these were consultations on several aspects, since it involves some gaming involves real money as well. So you would get to see that now there are certain disclaimers, there are certain you can log on to the ASCII website and you will get to see those guidelines which which brands and also startups would have to now comply with. These have been approved by the ministries for consumer affairs, MeitY, as well as MIBA. So it's interesting to take a look at that, and this is across all media platforms.
And Rohit, do you think that, let's say, Indian IPs like Indian characters or localizing the content will help the situation of users, Indian users specifically, not paying, or just to inculcate that habit of paying for a game? Do you think creating Indian IPs would, or localized content would help?
So I would say 50-50 on that. I wouldn't say that it will definitely do that, but we can't answer that question right now because we don't have any data to support it as of now, right? Having said that, the current consumption or the spend that the users or the Indians are doing on the international IPs or the international games is there. So in India, mostly it's the volume play, right? So if you look at, for example, the conversion ratio in US versus the conversion ratio in India, uh, here you will find much lesser conversion ratio, mainly because the play is mostly on the volume. So it will take some time. It is also mainly because we as Indians don't really look at softwares uh, from a paying perspective, right? So I mean, it goes a long way where we are all used to using pirated software, unfortunately. So it will take some time to get into that mindset in which you have to actually pay for a software.
Yeah. So now I've been talking from the business perspective, but now I would really little bit shift the gears and move to the career side of it. So Siddharth, do you want to shed some light upon what kind of career opportunities does gaming offer, uh,
Sure.
especially maybe esports you could talk about?
So, there are essentially three categories, and I would like my other panelists to talk about some of these categories, but I'll just list them down. One is a pro gamer, right? So as more and more tournaments are now coming up, as the prize pools are going up, and prize pool in general is a proxy, country after country, game after game, as to how successful that game is, how big esports is getting. So whether it was the international, whether it was Fortnite, the prize pools have only increased year on year globally. The same is happening in India now. So the prize pools are going up significantly, and hence for a pro gamer, that's a great opportunity to be there. So that's one. Second, being an influencer. So if you looked at 18 months back, and if you looked at gaming influencers who had more than 1 million followers on YouTube, there were a handful. Today, on the other hand, if you look at the number of gaming influencers who have more than 1 million followers on YouTube, that number has crossed 50, right? So that's a big shift which has happened in the last 18 months, and that's a big opportunity for these people to earn money as an influencer. And then the third category is, as the ecosystem starts developing, newer career opportunities come up. So as the esports ecosystem is growing, you could be a cameraman, you could be an analyst, you could be a caster, you could be a producer, you could be a director, you could be just talent which is hosting some of these large shows, and those are opportunities that are coming up. Uh, and 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 again, if I mean, that's the analogy is same as Apple today earns 80% of their revenue from products didn't exist 12 months 10 years back. Esports didn't exist 5 years back in this country, and today you're already talking, I mean, all the options that I have laid out in front of you as options in the whole gaming and esports ecosystem have come up in the last 4 or 5 years, and we are just about scratching the surface right now.
Correct. And of course the pro gamer wouldn't that also being the one of the career opportunities for people, as you mentioned. So Roland, do you want to put light upon this part? That is there, what's the number looks like? Are there any efforts happening to encourage gamers really? Do you have anything?
Yeah, I think there is in the excess of about 100,000 pro gamers in this country, and some of the reasons Rohit mentioned, Siddharth mentioned on why this could see an upside going forward. The pro leagues will increase, and the prize money will definitely be an attractive hook for such. I also believe that there are certain platforms that are looking at percolating to the university and school level tournaments, and those again would. So we have to look at it like the sport ecosystem. The more so esport is being used to market itself, and then people, brands, and the pro gamers will use esports to market themselves. So I think that is now happening, and that are some of the reasons why we'll see a huge influx of pro gamers going forward.
Uh, Guys, so about the careers, staying still on careers, we are talking about the careers that probably involve in esports, but in generally in gaming, Rohit, can you just briefly tell us the various career opportunities that has from the developer publisher side of it?
Right, right. So gaming, is a very, very unique field in the sense that gaming is one area in which you would find people from lots of disciplines at once, right? So whether it is design, where the designers play a role, UI, UX, whether it is 3D art, animation, whether it is programming tech, right, or whether it is the backend engineering, then it comes to management, right? So I would say gaming is one of the most complex piece of software that you can create, and you need like people from various disciplines to be able to create that. So if, for example, I mean, you don't have to necessarily pursue a degree in gaming or anything like that, but even if you become expert in one of the fields, that suddenly opens your door to getting into gaming. Definitely passion for gaming being one of the prerequisite in the industry. So
Yeah, so essentially passion is what drives, and then you can take up
yeah.
side depending upon what your liking and your skill lies in.
Correct.
Interesting. So we've been before, so there have been certain questions that are already been asked by the audience, and I would like to take some of them. So one of the question was that yes, COVID has given a push to this industry. Do you guys believe that it will continue to grow, or it will fizzle out? What do you think? Maybe starting with Roland.
Yeah, I think it will only increase from here. As far as the RMG is concerned, there are certain challenges in south of India, particularly. But I believe that we are working towards some national level policies that would then mitigate those risks.
Nice. Siddharth, what do you think?
So in we have toyed with this question a lot, and we do a lot of discussion around this. I think one of the things which has very clearly now come out as far as esports is concerned, that esports is a very active form of engagement and entertainment. Vis-a-vis when you're watching regular sport, or watching just Netflix or Amazon or regular television, that's passive entertainment. And one of the things that we are increasingly realizing is that the youth wants active engagement, active entertainment. And if that were to be the case, then esports is not just here to stay, but grow much more than, I mean, COVID has just set the baseline. The growth is going to come now.
Great. So Rohit, what do you think?
So I would say, I mean, I will answer this question both from the supply side and the demand side. First, the demand side, in which we say that are people playing more games? Yes, I mean, during lockdown, it was at its peak, but it is coming back to the normal, like every other thing that you see around you. Having said that, COVID has actually captured attention of a lot of investors suddenly, right? And because of this, we see that there might be more gaming startups who might be able to raise funding going forward, because more people will be willing to take risk, which is a good thing for the industry as such. From a supply side, I don't think so much is going to change, mainly because if you look in India, the winning was also for the gaming studios, international gaming studios who has games in India, right? So from supply side, nothing much will change, but from demand side, yes, definitely.
Sure. And there is also a very interesting question, that is, how do young students can build career in gaming? Now, before I actually open for you guys to answer, I would like to say, a funny story. When I started into games, like about 20 years back, nobody knew what I was doing. And even today, my daughters say that, Mom, what are you doing? You're only playing games. You're not doing anything, just do some work. And it was really hard for me to explain, what do I do? But now I am very thrilled to hear this question, that how a student can enter into games and how can he train himself. So I would like to ask each one of you, maybe starting with Rohit, and then Siddharth and Roland.
Can you repeat your question? I mean, I understood your story, but what is the question?
Sorry, my story was more interesting, is it?
Yes.
Well, what they say is that, how can student, if they want to start their career in games, how do they train themselves? How do they inform themselves to enter this industry?
So, like you have been a gamer as well. I won't say pro gamer necessarily, but it's a long journey, right? So basically, esports is very much like sports, if you see, right? it has the ultimate hand-eye coordination. Ultimately, how good are you from a strategy perspective to play a specific game, right? And it will stay for you with you for a specific amount of time. Like when you grow old, you actually get bad at playing games ultimately. So I mean, for kids to start early, and which they're already doing actually, plays a very important role. I believe as the esports industry grow, there maybe it might be possible that the training institutes might come up as well, similar to how sports happens. And but at a very high level, there needs a support from the ecosystem, right? When I say ecosystem, it's like the parents, the teachers, and things like that, who don't see gaming as something which is really bad, right? But something that you can actually build a career in. Yeah.
Sure. And from the if someone wants to enter the gaming from the programmer or the artist or any other forms apart from being a gamer, yes, of course, being a gamer is and being a influencer like a YouTuber is career option, but the other career options probably be the which goes into the development of the games. So, what do you think students should train uh, when it comes to programming or artist they want to enter it as, or tester maybe?
So I would say that so we have actually seen programmers who actually design. We have seen programmers who are artists as well. Something that I've seen personally worked is to expose yourself to different fields in gaming, whether it is art, design, or maybe programming, to see where is the fit happening, where is the product market fit happening, kind of a thing, right? And once you find that yes, this is where I'm good at, then you can double down on it.
Sure. And Siddharth, do you want to say anything? How do they enter the gaming?
Well,
As
so
a,
again, if you are looking at becoming a pro gamer, then like Rohit mentioned, start playing early. You need to know your limitations. You need to know whether you have the potential to get there. Uh, because that's the same for cricket, right? If I want to be a cricketer, I will start early, but then I need to be honest to myself. The only difference is there are enough and more academies in traditional sports today, but those are all coming in gaming as well. As the games become bigger, as the ecosystem develops, as the grassroots ecosystem develops, training academies are going to come, and they are going to start identifying that talent, making sure there is that talent. So that's as far as the pro gamer is concerned. But if you look at the rest of the ecosystem of gaming and esports, one is there are individual courses that are available, right? So if you want to be a programmer, learn programming. Then it's just an application of being a programmer in gaming space. You are a visual designer, learn visual designing. Then it's about your creativity and application of that in the gaming space. You can do animation, you can do gaming, you can do commercial art. So that's just an application. However, my prediction is in the next 1 to 2 years, there are courses that are going to come which are more like degree courses in esports and gaming. I mean, bunch of US universities already offer those courses. So at the last count, I think there are about 25 US universities that offer 4-year degree courses in esports and gaming. Will that happen in India? My sense is in the next 12 to 18 months, you will see some of these courses that will start coming up in India as well.
Nice. That's quite comforting. So Roland, yes, we talked about from the developer how a career can happen. Are there any other careers opportunities available to enter into gaming as such, or what do you think?
No, as even for RMG is the same as esports in the sense, you could be part of the development of the game. And in some formats, some game formats, you can also, play professionally. However, I just like to, both Rohit and Siddharth did answer, those questions. I just want to add to what Siddharth said is that Pearson, the UK, learning giant, they have already here and they're offering those courses. They spoke to me as well. So you'll see them, very soon offering what you just said. So there is, a plethora of options available for young people. And for as far as pro gaming is concerned, I only helped some of the parents of these kids who came to me, very anxiously. So I helped them connect to the, people who could help them out.
Hey, so staying on that parent topic, there was another interesting question which says that how can industry persuade parents to allow their kids to become pro gamers? I think this is definitely from a gamer who has written this question for sure. So Roland, do you want to take that question?
Sorry, can you just repeat that? I was distracted for a second. Yeah.
The question is that what does the industry is doing or would do to convince the parents to allow their kids to become pro gamers? Like, how do you convince them to see this as a good career opportunity and not really look down upon kinds?
Yeah, so on a lighter note, I would say, unlike cricket, where there are probably millions aspiring, here there are only a few lakhs, if not more than that. So it would be a good opportunity to let them pursue what they think is best in their interests.
Yeah, I see
And
Siddharth, you grinning.
the prize money is, at least 20 times more in any case.
Yeah, I see Siddharth, you smiling. So I'm
Yeah,
sure
I
you have
think,
something to add.
I think the proof is in the pudding, right? So as the industry grows and as the industry, and it's not just your word against mine, as the number of pro leagues become big, more, as the prize pools become higher, the pro leagues speak for themselves. So again, going to a global example, last year, a 15-year-old won Fortnite and he won $3 million for that. Now, if you're sitting in the US or you're sitting in Europe, the parents don't need to question that anymore, saying, do you really have a career option in gaming? Proof is in the pudding right there. And same thing is happening in India. And, most of the people sitting on this panel are ensuring that we are leading by example. So when we do as Nodwin, every year when we do our the next season of our any league or tournament, we make sure we increase the prize pool, right?
Yeah.
And we try and introduce newer formats, newer games, newer leagues where we have a significant prize pool, and that speaks for itself.
Yeah. So, Roland, just a quick question. So, does an ethical gaming as a topic comes to play to be worked upon to basically maybe make the parents change the perspective of this career option?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yes.
Great. So there is one more question that is asked. Maybe Rohit would be able to answer that well. I feel.
So Lakshmi, I think we'll take this one last question and then we can move towards concluding remarks because we have about 5 or 6 minutes. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for letting me know. I was just going on.
No worries.
Cool. So this is basically asked is that what are the metrics that from the consumer behavior point of view are important for games?
So one of the most important KPI, right, or the matrix is the retention, right? Ultimately, that is what defines whether the game is successful or not, right? So there are a couple of metrics that the gaming industry usually follow, whether it's the day 1 retention, day 7, day 28, right? And that actually determines whether the game is a success or not. Because even if you have a good retention, but you don't have good monetization, you can actually achieve good monetization by working on that, but not the other way around.
Nice. So I think we have just enough time for closing remarks. So I would probably ask each one of you to, what do you want to give out to the startup community in India in gaming? So that
I can go on that. I think the primary message for the startup community is that all this while you needed a lot of patience if you were in the gaming industry, because there was a fairly slow and steady growth. A lot of times, a black swan event like COVID changes those perceptions and everyone starts feeling, oh, great, this is the best time to be in gaming. Let's get into it. But let's remember that the business principles will still follow. You still need that patience because there are a lot of headwinds that will always remain in gaming, especially as far as the perceptions of people are concerned. The way we are building this industry, there are tailwinds, sure, but then there are headwinds as well. And my only message is it's a great industry to be in. It's one of those defensible industries that has come out in times of COVID. But having said that, irrational exuberance will still not have any room to play for startups. You will have to build things sensibly. You will have to focus on unit economics. And that's the only way to build businesses in this industry.
Sure. Roland, your comments, please.
Yeah, thanks, Lakshmi, for bringing out all those questions and answers, and thank you, Mumbai Angels, for organizing this. Happy to be a part of this panel with Siddharth and Rohit. My closing remarks would be that it's a great sector. I've spent about 6 years in this space right now, coming from media, entertainment, and sport businesses. But yeah, as Siddharth mentioned, the next few years would be extremely exciting, and the investors, as we saw, at least till about 2-3 months back, they were extremely excited about the space, and I believe there's a lot of international exposure that would want to look. They're already looking at India, and they want to participate in the growth story here. So it's a great space. Also, from want to add about the career part that you alluded to earlier. So I think just as sport has evolved as a business, I think gaming would be the next sport
Thanks.
industry.
Yeah, so my advice, or maybe the appeal to the entrepreneurs or the gaming startups, would be to become actually more ambitious in terms of taking risks, right? I mean, it is definitely easy for you to create a Ludo game, definitely, but go for creating PUBG Mobile. Ultimately, that should be the aim, because that is going to be very, very rewarding in the long term, not just for you as a company, but also for the entire ecosystem of India.
I agree. All right, over to you, Shivangi.
Thank you, Lakshmi, for steering this very interesting conversation. And thank you, Rohit, Roland, and Sid, for taking time out for our panels. I'm sure our investors and founders have gained valuable insights that they can now implement in their business. With this, we conclude panel 1.